Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Invisible Dad Podcast. This is the podcast for all the dads out there who show up every day, even when it feels like nobody notices, nobody appreciates, and sometimes nobody even likes the choices you have to make. Today, we're diving into something a little bit heavy, but definitely necessary. And that's the idea that being liked by your kids doesn't define your worth as a father. I know that sounds a little bit counterintuitive. After all, we all want to be that fun dad, the one our kids want to hang out with, the dad who can say yes and never hear no. But here's the truth. Being liked is not the same thing as being effective. Being liked does not equal being a good dad. And if you chase approval as the main goal, you'll almost always end up frustrated, burnt out, and second-guessing yourself. I know, I've been there. There were moments when I wanted my kid to love every decision I made. When I felt hurt if they cried, argued, or pushed back, I thought, am I failing as a dad if they're upset? And the truth is, that mindset almost ruined my ability to parent with confidence. Almost. This episode is about shifting that thinking. It's about understanding the difference between love and likability, learning to stand firm in your boundaries, and realizing that sometimes being the dad who says no, or who enforces rules, or who teaches hard lessons isn't just okay, it's necessary. Here's what we'll cover today. We're going to start by talking about why it's impossible to be liked all the time, and why that's okay. Next, we'll discuss how the desire to be liked can derail your parenting, and then go over some tools for setting boundaries while staying loving. After that, we'll dive into how your kids actually benefit from a dad who prioritizes their growth over their approval. And finally, we'll go over some stories and practical strategies for handling the tough moments when your child resists or dislikes your choices. By the end of this episode, I want you to leave knowing this. Your value as a father is not tied to being liked. Your kids will push back. They will get upset. They will test you. And that's a good thing, because what they need isn't a friend. They need a dad. And being a dad doesn't require approval. It requires presence, consistency, and courage. All right, let's start by breaking down this first truth. Your kid's love for you is not the same as their agreement with you. It's easy to confuse the two, especially when your child throws a tantrum, argues, or refuses to do something you asked. You might think, if they're upset, they must hate me or they don't love me. And that's a trap, dads. That's a lie our emotions can tell us in the moment. Kids are going to test you. That's part of growing up. And sometimes it doesn't come out as curiosity. It comes out as attitude and frustration and arguments, or that classic silent treatment. You know what I'm talking about. And that part can hit especially hard when you don't get to see your child all the time. Because in your head, you're thinking, I barely get this time. I don't want to spend it fighting. But being a dad isn't measured by how happy they are with you in the moment. I ran into this with my oldest. He'll ask me for money for Fortnite skins or Robux, whatever the new video game is that week. And normally I'd rather just say yes and enjoy the time together. But his grades weren't where they needed to be. The effort wasn't there. Even with his basketball, something he says that he loves, it wasn't getting the focus that it deserved. So I told him no. And I didn't just say no. I explained why. We talked about priorities, about effort, about how real life doesn't reward you just because you want something. You got to earn it. And he didn't like that. Sometimes he gets mad. Sometimes I get short answers. Sometimes he just stops talking altogether. And I'd be lying if I said that didn't bother me. Because when you don't see your kid often, the last thing you want is distance between you. But that's the moment where you decide what kind of dad you're going to be. I had to remind myself, I'm not here just to make him happy for a weekend. I'm here to help him become a man. And those two things don't always look the same in real time. So I stayed steady, calm, and consistent. I didn't punish out of frustration. I didn't cave out of guilt. I just held the line and kept showing him that I cared. Not by giving him everything that he wanted, but by expecting something from him. And that's the truth a lot of us have to accept. Your child won't always like you when you're doing your job right. Sometimes love looks like laughter and jokes. Sometimes love looks like a difficult conversation. Sometimes love looks like saying no and sitting in the discomfort afterward. The reaction is temporary, but the lesson sticks. They may not thank you now. They may not even understand it yet. But over time, they'll learn something important. And that's dad isn't just here to entertain me. Dad is here for me. And that builds respect in a way approval never can. You don't have to be liked in every moment to be a good dad. You just have to be consistent enough that one day they realize why you were. And want another example? Consider teaching responsibility. Assign chores. Require homework before screen time. Expect respectful communication. Your kids might dislike you during that process. They might even argue daily about it. But those lessons shape character, resilience, and accountability. And when they reflect later in life, they'll recognize that the dad who wasn't always fun was the one who showed up consistently, set expectations, and cared enough to enforce them. Here's a mindset shift to try. Every time your child pushes back, ask yourself, am I chasing likability or am I cultivating growth? If it's the former, pause. If it's the latter, lean in, stay firm, and trust the long game. Because being liked isn't your job. Being a dad is. All right, let's narrow this down to something a lot of dads feel, but don't always say out loud. And that's sometimes we start parenting for our child's approval instead of their growth. And it doesn't come from laziness or not caring. It comes from love, mixed with guilt, time limits, distance, or just a desire to keep peace when you finally get to be together. You want the time to be good. You don't want arguing to take over the few hours you do have. You don't want them counting the minutes until they leave. You don't want to be the parent they associate with rules and lectures. So without realizing it, your goal shifts. And instead of thinking, what does my child need from me? You start thinking, how do I keep them happy while they're here? That's the moment approval quietly becomes the driver. And approval changes your decisions. You hesitate before saying no. You shorten conversations that matter. You ignore small behaviors because you don't want the tension. You give a little extra just to keep the mood good. It works in the short term. They smile, they stay relaxed. The visits feel smooth. But underneath that smoothness, something important starts slipping, and that's clarity. Kids don't just learn from what you say, they learn from what you consistently allow. If your boundaries depend on their reaction, they never really know where the boundary is. One time the answer is no, next time is yes, because they were disappointed, and then another time you avoid the topic entirely. From their perspective, it doesn't feel like kindness. It feels unpredictable. And unpredictable parenting creates anxious kids, not secure ones. And here's the hard truth. Children don't measure love by how often you make them happy. They measure it by how steady you are. Approval-driven parenting makes you emotionally reactive. Their frustration becomes your discomfort. Their silence becomes your anxiety. Their disappointment becomes your problem to fix. Now you're not guiding anymore. You're managing moods. Over time, your child learns something without either of you realizing it. Big reactions move dad. Disappointment changes decisions, and pushing works. And that's not manipulation, that's adaptation. Kids naturally test what works, but when approval is the goal, you slowly hand them leadership of the relationship. You start negotiating things that shouldn't be negotiable. You explain basic expectations over and over and over, and you avoid accountability conversations because you don't want distance between you. And the irony is, chasing closeness creates instability. Because closeness built on agreement isn't secure, it's conditional. Real security comes from knowing the relationship doesn't change when emotions do. Another effect of approval-based parenting is emotional pressure on you and on them. You feel responsible for keeping the connection positive at all times. They feel uncomfortable expressing frustration honestly because they sense you need things to stay good. So both of you start protecting the moment instead of growing in it. Parenting isn't supposed to feel like hosting. You're not there to maintain a pleasant atmosphere. You're there to build a reliable relationship. And reliability requires limits. A child may not enjoy limits in real time, but they relax because of them. They stop guessing where the line is. They stop testing constantly. They stop wondering who's in charge. Approval feels warm in the moment. Consistency feels safe in the long run. One of the biggest shifts a dad can make is accepting this. Your child's temporary disappointment does not equal damage to your relationship. Silence isn't rejection. Frustration isn't disconnection. And anger isn't the end of trust. Often, it's the beginning of respect, because respect grows when a child realizes your decisions don't depend on their reaction. They depend on your care for their future. When you stop chasing approval, your tone changes. You explain once instead of repeatedly. You hold the line calmly instead of emotionally. You stay present instead of trying to repair every uncomfortable moment. And slowly, something powerful happens. They may argue less, not because they agree, but because the structure feels stable. They may talk more because they trust your reactions. They may test less because the boundary doesn't move. Approval asks, are we good right now? Parenting asks, will they be good later? Those two questions don't always lead to the same choice. Your child doesn't need you to protect them from frustration. They need you to protect them from confusion. They don't need constant agreement. They need predictable guidance. You won't always be liked in the moment, but when they know your love isn't dependent on their mood and your standards aren't dependent on their approval, they stop worrying about controlling the relationship, and then they can just be a kid. And that's when trust actually grows, because they're not trying to manage you anymore. They're learning from you. Now, let's talk about boundaries, dads. Boundaries are the backbone of effective fatherhood, but they're also the hardest part when you're worried about being liked. Saying no isn't easy. Enforcing rules isn't always fun. But here's the truth. Boundaries are an act of love, not punishment. Think about it this way. Your kids need limits to feel safe. They need structure to thrive. If you allow every request, tolerate every misbehavior, and ignore every boundary, you're actually doing them a disservice. It might feel easier in the moment, but long term, you're setting them up for confusion, entitlement, or frustration. So for me, when report cards come up and my son's asking for money for games, skins, or Robux, that turns into a real conversation now, not an argument, a conversation. I tell him no, and I explain why. Not because I'm trying to punish him and not because I want to take things away, but because I expect more from him and more than the bare minimum. And I can tell sometimes he thinks, I'm just trying to be hard on him. Sometimes he gets quiet. Sometimes he gets frustrated. When you don't see your child all the time, those moments can mess with your head a little because part of you wants to keep the peace and enjoy the time that you do have. But being a dad isn't just about protecting the moment. It's about protecting their future. If I tell him, yeah, that's good enough, when I know he can do better, I'm not helping him. I'm lowering the bar for his own life. So I stay steady, calm, clear, and consistent. I remind him that effort matters, that discipline matters, and that what he builds now carries forward. Over time, that's what boundaries do. They show a child the difference between what's easy and what's worthwhile. They teach that expectations aren't rejection, they're belief. I'm not asking more from him because I'm disappointed in him. I'm asking more because I'm confident in him and I believe in him. And that's the goal, not control, not punishment, but guidance. Helping him learn that the standards we hold today become the habits that we live by tomorrow. Boundaries also protect your energy as a father. When you enforce rules confidently, you reduce the chaos and uncertainty in daily life. You don't have to negotiate constantly. You don't have to beg for cooperation. You don't have to measure your worth based on approval. You can parent with intention because your kids know the structure and you know your role. And here's a practical tip. Decide your boundaries ahead of time. Know your non-negotiables, whether that's the bedtime, screen limits, manners, chores, respect, and stick to them. When your child tests you, you can respond from a place of clarity, not emotion. And if they push back, remind yourself, discomfort in the moment is part of growth. They're learning resilience and patience and the value of consistency. And finally, remember that enforcing boundaries doesn't mean being unloving or harsh. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's showing your child that you care enough to guide them correctly. The approval or likability will ebb and flow, but your love will always remain clear. And over time, your children will appreciate a father who loved them enough to teach them boundaries, even when it wasn't easy. All right, now let's get to one of the most powerful truths. Your kids benefit more from a dad they don't always like than from a dad who always says yes. I know it doesn't feel good in the moment. The tears, the tantrums, the arguments can make you question yourself. But hear me out. This is the work of lasting fatherhood. Children need lessons they don't always want to learn. They need guidance they don't always enjoy. And the moments when they resist, push back, or express dislike, those are the moments when growth is happening. Every no you set, every correction you give, every expectation you hold is teaching them responsibility, patience, and the consequences of actions. So with my little one, boundaries look a little bit different, but they're still boundaries. Every night when it's time to wind down, take his bath, brush his teeth, and go to bed, we start the same way, and that's with cleanup. Toys go back where they belong, play area gets straightened up. At first, he'd pout a little bit because, he wasn't ready for the night then. He just wanted to keep playing. But instead of turning it into a battle, we turned it into a routine. See, he loves the cleanup song from Gracie's Corner. So now that's our cue. I hit play and he starts laughing and dancing and picking up toys at the same time. And it's not forced. It's not tense. It's just consistent. And that's the thing. Structure doesn't have to feel harsh to be effective. He still goes to bed on time. He still brushes his teeth. He still follows through. But we built that rhythm in a way that works for him. That's what calm consistency looks like with a toddler. Not yelling, not bargaining, just a steady routine that he now expects and honestly has fun with. And another example is teaching emotional regulation. Kids often lash out when frustrated. Your first instinct might be to avoid the struggle, smooth things over, or say yes just to make them happy. But standing firm, guiding them through the feelings, helping them name emotions, and enforcing limits teaches them emotional literacy. They learn how to manage anger, disappointment, and frustration, skills they'll carry for life. And here's the underlying principle. Temporary dislike equals long-term respect and growth. The dad who was always liked may feel good in the short term, but he's often not preparing his child for real-world challenges. The dad who isn't always liked is teaching responsibility, empathy, and resilience. And those are gifts far more valuable than approval. Here's a tip. When your child resists, remind yourself, I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to guide. And this idea can help you stay grounded, reduce guilt, and stay consistent. Every time you choose intentionality over likability, you're building a foundation of trust, security, and guidance that your child will carry into adulthood. Finally, remember that love is consistent, even when likability fluctuates. Your child may dislike you for a moment, a day, or even a week, but when your actions are rooted in care, discipline, and guidance, they feel the love behind the firmness. That love combined with structure is what raises resilient, responsible, and emotionally healthy kids. So, how do you handle those moments when your child resists, argues, or dislikes your choices? Here are some practical strategies that work in real life. 1, stay calm. Your child will mirror your emotional state. If you react with frustration, yelling, or guilt, it escalates. Take a deep breath, lower your voice, and respond with calm authority. Calmness communicates control, care, and confidence. And number 2, acknowledge feelings, but stay firm, saying, I know you're upset, and it's okay to feel that way. Validates emotions without undermining the boundary. This shows your child that feelings are safe to express, even when the behavior is unacceptable. And number 3, offer choices within limits. Give autonomy where possible. For example, you can do your homework before or after dinner, but it's got to be done today. Kids feel empowered, but the boundary remains intact. And number 4, use natural consequences. Let actions have results. If your child refuses to put away toys, then they lose access to them for the next day. Natural consequences teach responsibility better than abstract punishment. Number 5, consistency over convenience. Don't bend just to be liked. Kids need to know that rules are reliable. Inconsistent enforcement confuses them and reduces respect for your authority. And number 6, reflect afterward. After the situation has cooled, review what went well and what you could improve. Did you stay calm? Did your child feel heard? Did you maintain the boundary? Self-reflection improves your response next time. And the key takeaway, resistance isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that growth is happening. Your role is to guide, not to be liked. Your effectiveness as a dad comes from patience, consistency, and love, not approval. All right, let's talk about the long game. The mindset that separates dads who are effective from dads who are constantly chasing approval. The shift is simple but profound. Prioritize respect and love over likability. Your kids will like you sometimes and dislike you other times. That's normal. But respect is built on consistency, boundaries, and integrity. Love grows from your presence, attention, and care. Likability, that comes and goes, but it shouldn't guide your decisions. Here's how to internalize this mindset. Reframe your purpose. Remind yourself daily, I'm a dad first and a friend second. My goal is to raise capable, responsible, and emotionally healthy humans, not to be liked in every moment. Track victories quietly. Celebrate the moments you enforced a rule calmly, guided your child through frustration, or stayed consistent under pressure. These small wins matter far more than approval. Shift your focus from approval to connection. Engage with your child intentionally. Play, talk, read, and be present. Connection strengthens love, even when rules create short-term tension. Practice patience with discomfort. Your child's dislike is temporary. The lessons are permanent. Hold firm, stay loving, and trust the long-term benefits. Reflect on the growth. Look back over months and years. You'll see that moments of pushback were some of the most valuable teaching moments. Likability fades, but growth and respect endure. Think of it like this. Your role is to raise adults, not many friends. And adults are built from lessons learned, boundaries respected, and love felt, not from a childhood of constant approval. Every no you give, every boundary you enforce, every moment of resistance you navigate is a seed planted for the adult your child will become. All right, dads, let's wrap this up. Being liked isn't your job. Being effective, loving, and present is. Your children may resist, argue, or even express dislike, and that's normal, that's healthy, and it's not a reflection of your worth as a father. What matters is how you show up, with consistency, calm, patience, and love. What matters is that you make intentional choices for their growth, even when those choices aren't popular. And what matters is that you trust the long game. The love, respect, and resilience you're building in them will last far longer than any fleeting moment of approval. So today, I want you to walk away with this. You don't have to be liked to be a good dad. You don't need to win every argument, avoid every tear, or be fun all the time. You just need to be present, consistent, and intentional. That's what creates trust. That's what builds love. And that's what raises adults. Thanks for tuning in to the Invisible Dad podcast. Thanks for showing up for your kids, even when it's hard. And thanks for believing that being a dad is about action, presence, and love, not approval. As always, I see you, I hear you, and I appreciate you. Till next time, keep showing up. Peace.